like to welcome our next partner, BP3, to the stage, please.
Oh, there we go. Hello, I'm David Brakoniecki from BP3. I'm the Chief Delivery Officer there. And I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about how we use agentic orchestration in Camunda for compliance monitoring use cases. So compliance monitoring is something that we all recognize, like we heard this morning, some of the banks talk about fraud detection. It's really about, instead of just doing compliance checks or checking at the moment you sign a contract or checking, auditing once a year for compliance, continuously checking and continuously making compliance part of your everyday work. And compliance monitoring is really a challenged area of the business because if you think about it, most of it today is done by, is in a complex environment. Globalization means the amount of regulations, the amount of trading environments for most businesses, even small businesses, is a lot more than it ever was in the past. The speed with which businesses are expected to respond to market conditions need to respond because their competitors are moving faster than ever before. And the complexity of the regulation is up. There's more regulation, a higher regulatory burden on many of these businesses. And the solution for most of that, for many businesses, has been fairly highly priced, expensive knowledge workers, right? Most compliance departments have some sort of legal training, or at least are very experienced, and a lot of knowledge goes into being these kinds of workers. And that leads to a solution, as you'd expect, where compliance organizations tend to be small because no CEO is going to get rewarded by his shareholders or praised for over-investing in compliance. Once you don't have a compliance problem, once you've identified all the risks, you're kind of done. Spending twice that amount of money, there's no advantage to it, right? It's not like sales or other parts of your business maybe where if you're getting a lot of sales growth in a region, hiring more salespeople is maybe the right investment decision. No one's ever said that about compliance officers, right? And what that really means is that for most businesses, compliance is an underfunded part of the business. It's a cost center that has increased challenges to try to navigate their business through the risks of an increasingly complex trading environment for the business. And normally they only they swing into action when something goes wrong, when there's a bunch of fines or there's a negative impact, and then suddenly you get more money, you get more investment, you can put more people in the problem. And so really I want to talk to you today a little bit about a pilot program we're running with one of our customers, and it's really about a specific type of compliance, although a lot of the general concepts we think hold across all of that sort of risk management for businesses. So if you're a pharma or a medical device organization, you'll quite often have healthcare professional events. So you'll have doctors or nurses or other people who speak in public forums or symposium about your product or service. And the way you pay them, the way you can book those events, and how that interaction works between you and those HCPs, those healthcare professionals, is extremely regulated. It's regulated differently in different countries. And there could be a lot of these events, right? If you're a big pharma, these are going on constantly at universities. They're going constantly on at conferences, and they're happening all over the place. So monitoring these compliance tends to be quite a difficult situation. But what also happens today is this is really being monitored in a lot of pharma companies by, like I said, a legal team. So very expensive people who are highly trained, who understand complex regulatory environment, are basically going through and auditing what they've done and the way they've spent this marketing money in the last year. They're going through, and what's happening, they're sitting at their desk and they're looking at all of these event logs and all of these different events they've done, and again, not homogeneous events. There aren't the same data for each event. Different instances will have different types of contracts. The payment terms might be different. The way the structure is different. And they're going through this, and they're not checking all of them because that's too much effort, and these people are too expensive, and the compliance burden is too great. So to mitigate the risk, they're doing an audit. They're sampling this. They're taking a random selection of these events, and they're going through and looking at the data linked to them and using their judgment, reading the contracts and determining, well, in a bunch of cases we're compliant, maybe 2 or 3 cases we've done something wrong, and when we've done something wrong, they're trying to think about, is there a pattern of errors that we've done? So should we look for other instances like that and find other problems? Or is it just a one-off, we just filed the wrong contract, and actually if we just go and get the right paperwork, we can remediate the circumstance, and we can remove the risk from our business. How do we mitigate this failing? Again, this is very manual. It requires a lot of expertise and a lot of understanding different contexts. But the biggest problem with it really is you can't know that you're checking everything, right? You're still just sampling the overall number of events, and it's very retroactive. It's not proactive. You're not doing it in real time as you're doing the events. Twice a year, you show up, maybe every quarter, and you select this sample, and you go through, and you do this manual check, and you retrospectively look to see if you did something wrong 6 months ago, 4 months ago in the past. And really, AI is the key then to making those knowledge workers more powerful and allowing them to look at everything and to expand the reach of their expertise so that it can really move not only from looking backwards, but looking forward in time, or at least in the present, but also instead of just looking at some of the events, looking at all of the events. As the mandatory BPMN diagram for a Camunda conference. But really, there's a couple key pieces that I want to talk about why this makes it, where the AI fits in and how it makes a difference and drives that value creation. The first is, look, Camunda has an awesome connector framework, so we can monitor the systems of record, places like Viva, Salesforce, some of these other systems. We can look for the events as they're happening, and when we find an event, then what do? The AI looks for it and says, because we have this type of event, we expect to have this type of documentation, and then we can go look for that documentation. We can trigger other integrations, other connectors. We can go into SharePoint, we can find the documents, and we can reason through them. Once we find the documents, of course, we can ingest those documents and understand them. And look, there is some complexity in how we do this, right? Some of the documents here are legal contracts, and they do not have the same format. So, again, often think today, with the current state of AI, that things like IDP, document ingestion, it's kind of a solved problem if you're dealing with purchase orders or invoices. Lots of technologies can reliably extract all the data from those kinds of formats. The formats are standard enough. You can train AI to find that. But there's still a fair amount of complexity into going through unstructured legal contracts with the same structure and looking for a specific regulated clause or the point at which there's something that we have to understand and then apply regulation to, right? To achieve a lot of this, we had to break down. This isn't just dumping the contracts at ChatGPT and asking for the answer. A lot of what we're doing inside of this is breaking down and constructing both AI prompts and LMs, but also using decision models to create smaller, more structured pathways of prompts so that we can find, no matter what the compensation clauses in any of the contract formats are, no matter what currency they are, we can extract that data out and we can figure out what regulation we should be applying depending on what jurisdiction to it. Similarly, there we go. One of the key elements of this whole thing is that the contracts are signed. So we have to go in and teach the AI to read the signatures. And the signature blocks in the contracts are in different shapes and formats. Again, extracting data in similar formats in IDP, extremely simple AI problem for today in the current state of affairs. But this is actually quite tricky, and what's interesting about it is if you just dump these contracts in their current form into most LLMs and they treat them, they'll really get confused easily on the prompts if it looks at them as characters or text. To actually get it to correctly identify and extract the dates and whether or not it was signed and how the signatures worked, we'd much better results by getting this back-end system to take an image of the signature blocks and feed the image in and have the LLMs read the images, right? So again, inside the construction of how the AI works, AI is making this knowledge work, and this is, again, these two examples, incredibly easy for a human knowledge worker. Menial tasks. For these highly trained compliance workers, this is menial work for them to try to be doing. It's obvious for a human brain as to that these contracts are both signed and that these signature blocks are equivalent. But actually getting AI to do this, it's certainly possible in the current state of technology. It just takes a little more work. So really, a lot of this comes down to training the AI to be able to understand the contracts in context so that we can then navigate and orchestrate the process. And compliance makes and Camunda makes orchestrating the process off the back of that AI really simple then. So what happens at the end of it as we go through the rest of the process, once we have that data and we've applied that, we apply compliance rules to it. This is why we're looking for the data, we've pulled it all out, we've read the contracts. In some of those cases, we're validating it, and we don't know what the answer is. We don't know if we're compliant or not, so guess what? It goes back to a human-in-the-loop caseworker. In many cases, though, what's happening is we find a specific thing that we think is wrong. We know we've failed the compliance check. And in those cases, the AI agent, the Camunda implementation, can actually involve the compliance worker in a dynamic sense to actually identify things. Here you can see sort of the monitoring dashboard, and you can see we have a new event coming in, we found something, and we found there's a contract that's missing a signature. We've also see Slack is notifying this compliance worker of where the failing is. And you can see we found two things. We have a signature and a date that's missing. We haven't identified that. The AI agent couldn't find it for some reason. In this case, though, they could certainly click in and use the UI, but also what's happening is we have it set up so that Slack can actually talk to the compliance worker. So again, while the agent is working autonomously in some cases to find and identify data that might be missing in these events, it also can work in co-pilot mode almost and engage the caseworker to say, okay, like here's this contract, I have it, it looks like the right thing, but it's not signed. Do you have a signed version? And in this case, the caseworker can say, actually, that's not the right thing, here's a better version of it, which will then re-execute the actual compliance monitoring tests and determine this is actually this is all fine then. And you can see the instance is passed at the end now. And the details now we have who signed it, what the data that the signatures are, and all the different compliance checks. Again, I mean, there's a strong mix inside here of traditional guardrails provided by Camunda DNM engine, deterministic process techniques, using these highly skilled knowledge workers. We're not trying to get rid of them, we're trying to make them more powerful, and we're trying to make them more efficient. One of the most interesting things about this, about the benefit analysis behind this case is that when you ask the customer, how long does it take you to do this, they don't actually know, right? Like, our compliance group does this over 3 or 4 weeks, twice a year. They get it done in 4 weeks. We don't know how much effort they put into it. In theory, if all the data's there, it gets done very quickly in a couple minutes. A lot of times they spend a lot of time chasing the data. So where are we going next? Training the AI to also be able to chase data throughout the organization, send emails, do all of that pursuit, which is now a human job and takes a lot of time and effort. And with that, thank you guys. And we have a booth if you want to learn more. So. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Love the healthcare focus on this one. Love that it's actually applicable to all sorts of industries as well. And it's also really nice to see how you can just, in this instance, use Slack and communicate like a human with your process. So really appreciate it.